What worries me more, and not just Tucker, and that's a symptom of all this, is that they're curating sympathy in America, and they're helping nurture and develop an isolationist wing in my party and in our country, which I think is very, very dangerous. They're developing, people who want to see NATO reduced or NATO not adhered to. Obviously, former President Trump is pushing this line as well. So what I very much worry about is they're helping curate a line of thought, a school of thought that is isolationist, that is pro-Putin, pro-Russia, pro-tyranny at the end of the day. And that is extremely dangerous for all democracy, but for us as ourselves, democracy. And so what I see Tucker is just one little chapter in that story. I didn't watch that whole interview. I watched a little bit of it, but it just looked like a kind of an infomercial for Putin to be able to push his propaganda.
All right, guys, so we got to talk about CNBC anchor Joe Kernen, who has done a pretty good job lately sounding the alarm on the extreme policies of the left, particularly when it comes to the economic policies that are going to drive our country closer to communism, right? That is what Kamala Harris is trying to do, okay, with her policies like, for example, price controls and unrealized capital gains taxes. This is the type of stuff that a conservative cannot support. They cannot vote for this, okay? On top of the fact that Kamala Harris is also super far left on social issues as well, too. There is no conservative case to vote for Kamala Harris, okay? However, you do have so-called conservatives like Adam Kinzinger and Ana Navarro coming out here and voting for Kamala Harris, openly supporting the most far left Democrat ticket that we've ever seen in this country, right, in history, okay? And then you have some other Republicans that are like, you know what, I'm just going to sit it out, right? The Chris Christie types, okay, the Paul Ryan types, they're like, you know what, I'm just not going to vote at all, right? However, I do have issues with these individuals because they are choosing to sit out the election to potentially allow Kamala Harris to win, to usher in the most far left administration ever, okay? And they openly acknowledge this. And the reason why you have these Republicans, or so-called Republicans and conservatives, that are choosing to vote for Kamala or sit it out, it has really nothing to do with policy as much as it has to do with Trump derangement. Well, I just don't like Trump, right? I just don't like Trump. This is why I'm sitting it out, right? This is essentially the argument. And this argument is so weak that Joe Kernen confronted Pat Toomey, a Republican who was a former senator for Pennsylvania. Joe Kernen confronted Pat Toomey on how his decision to basically sit out the election could allow Kamala Harris to win and to usher in all these far left policies that you claim that you don't want and that the country cannot handle these far left policies, but yet you're deciding to sit out the election because of Trump derangement. Take a look.
When you look at the presidential race, you guys like Paul Ryan, that tell me, you give me a list of reasons why Kamala Harris would be the worst thing to ever happen, but still won't vote for Trump and say something like, well, it's not really a vote for Harris, and I'm not really, I just can't. Yeah, because it is a binary choice. So a vote not for Trump is a vote for Harris.
So a couple of things. First of all, I voted for Donald Trump.
I know
twice,
you did, but
16
but
and
we're
in
not
2020.
talking about.
But when you lose an election and you try to overturn the results so that you can stay in power,
we all are familiar.
You lose me. You lose me at that point.
Then so you prefer Kamala Harris.
Hold on.
You would prefer Kamala Harris.
I acknowledge that the outcome is a binary situation, but my choice is not. I have the choice, and you and I are just going to disagree on this.
What if it came down to one vote, and it was yours that put Kamala Harris, and then it is yours?
It is an acceptable position for me to say that neither of these candidates can be my choice for president.
It's going to be one. 28% corporate taxes, 45% capital.
I get it. So the answer to that is Republican control of the Senate. And that is absolutely essential. If the other side runs the table, then Katie barred the door. They will repeal the filibuster, and they will be dragged by their left wing, which clearly is in charge now. And I think Kamala Harris proved that with her vice presidential election. And it's huge tax increases. It's probably some version of Medicare for all. It might even get to an expansion of the Supreme Court because there will be no breaks. But the good news is, I think Republicans are going to take the Senate.
Right. Perhaps, but there's plenty of regulatory moves, as we've seen from Biden. There's sort of executive orders. There's plenty of things that even if the Senate does. Well,
yes, there is damage that will be done there. However, a Republican Senate can mitigate that also by its power of confirmation, and they've got to hang tough on some of these nominees.
The best you can hope for is maybe a defensive gridlock type situation where the worst case scenario doesn't happen. The filibuster's not ended. The Supreme Court doesn't go to 18 people.
Exactly.
We don't make it a civil offense to cross the border. We end the filibuster. All
of those things don't happen if Republicans are in control of the Senate.
Yeah, so there's so many things wrong with Pat Toomey and his argument. I don't even know where to start, okay? But let me start with this, okay? Which is that these people, in my opinion, they're not taking principled conservative stances, right? That's not what they're doing, right? A lot of these people want to remain a part of the club, okay? And you got to understand the establishment Democrats and the establishment Republicans have a club, right? There are events, galas, opportunities, research, things of that nature that are associated with remaining a part of the club and the establishment, okay? Now, Pat Toomey here, who voted for Trump in the past, is basically saying, well, I can't vote for Trump this time because he tried to overturn the election, right? You just lose me when you do that. Okay, Pat, so what about the Democrats and the fact that they've tried to overturn the election, every election they've lost since George Bush, right? They've tried to do that. There's always massive political violence as a result of them losing elections because their supporters lose their minds, right? Just like they did when Trump was inaugurated. Okay, they were out there protesting, committing acts of violence, right? Democrats don't even have democracy within their own party. They didn't have a real primary. They were fighting lawfare against anybody that wanted to challenge Joe Biden. And then they staged a coup against Joe Biden and they inserted Kamala Harris. So I don't understand how is it that you can say, well, I'm going to sit this out. I am not going to vote for Trump, even though I know from a policy perspective that he's much better than Kamala Harris because of democracy, because he tried to overturn an election when it's like, if you look at the Democrats, they try to do the same thing. If anything, I would argue what they've done is worse, right? It's worse. So again, that argument just doesn't hold any weight with me, right? That argument, to me, is just an excuse for you to say, well, I'm going to sit it out because I don't like Trump. Just say you don't like him as a person, but don't give me some BS argument about democracy and all that because you're not getting that with the Democrats, okay? You're not getting that. There's no doubt in my mind. If Trump wins, the Democrats will be boohoo, whining, and crying, talking about how the election was stolen. They'll be trying to contest the election on January 6, 2025, okay, after telling the American people, no, you can't do that, right? That's not possible, okay? Can you guys imagine Kamala Harris confirming to the Senate that Trump won, right? Could you imagine that, right? Do you think that's going to go well, okay? Do you think that there's going to be a peaceful transfer, right? Do you really believe that if Trump wins, that Democrats are going to usher that in, that it's just going to bow out, okay? This is the same party that has been trying to throw Trump in prison, okay? This is the same party that just moved on and pretended like nothing happened while also pushing conspiracy theories after Trump was almost assassinated, right? Do you think this party is just going to be okay with Trump winning? Okay. No, that's not going to happen. So don't sit here and give me this BS talk about, well, Trump contested the election. That's it for me. I can't vote for him, right? That's not a good excuse, okay? And again, I would respect you much more if you just come out and say, I don't like the guy, right? Just say, I don't like the guy. And I would say, okay, well, hey, I think that, again, you're Trump deranged and that you're being irrational, but at least you're telling the truth. You're not giving me BS, okay? Because that's what this dude is giving, right? BS, okay? So the next thing that he said, I think is one of the main reasons why the Republican Party is a minority party. It's because a lot of these establishment guys, they want to be a minority party. They do not want to govern, right? They simply want to exist as an opposition party against Democrats while not pushing their own agenda, right? Because his justification for sitting it out, for not voting for Trump, is that, well, if Republicans win the Senate, then, hey, even if Kamala becomes president, the Senate, they can just block a vast majority of the things that Kamala Harris wants to do, right? It's fine, right? It'll be okay, okay? It will stifle Kamala Harris. And I'm like, okay, well, that may be true for certain domestic policies and the domestic agenda, but for the most part, when it comes to foreign policy, Kamala Harris will have free reign. Now, why doesn't he have a problem with Kamala Harris having free reign on foreign policy? Well, it's because these establishment guys, they agree with Kamala Harris's foreign policy, okay? Kamala Harris is going to be pro-Ukraine. For the most part, she's pro-Israel, right? So they don't really disagree with her when it comes to that, okay? It's going to be more wars, okay, under her, right? And under Trump, it's going to be different. Now, they don't really like that. They don't like Trump's foreign policy, okay? And that's another reason why these people are against Trump, is because he's not on board with the military-industrial complex, the neocon agenda, right? That people like Paul Ryan and the Pat Toomeys of the world, they love that, right? They love that, okay? So again, they're much more aligned with Kamala Harris on those things. And so they're okay with her having free reign over foreign policy. And they're like, okay, well, domestically, well, if Republicans win the Senate, then they can just block a vast majority of the things that Kamala wants to do domestically. And while this is true, that is part of the problem with the establishment Republican Party. This is why the establishment Republicans have had a difficult time winning the popular vote. They've had a difficult time actually gaining any momentum and leading the country in a different direction, because they don't stand for anything, right? They're not trying to lead the country in any real direction. They simply just want to exist, to be in opposition to the Democrats and their extremism, and then to occasionally agree with Democrats every now and then when, you know, they want to give corporate America a handout, right? Things like that. Yeah, that's what they'll get on board with. And again, that type of mindset from the establishment Republicans is the problem, right? Because we're not electing Republicans to simply stay in opposition to Democrats, because that's how nothing gets done. That's how the border continues to stay open, right? That's how the border continues to stay open. If Kamala Harris remains president, what are the Republicans going to do about the border? They can't do a damn thing about the border, right? Can't do anything about it, okay? Because Kamala, as the executive, is going to have a lot of authority and a lot of say over what happens at the border. So nothing will be done about it, which, again, a lot of these guys probably are okay with that, because a lot of these guys are on board with the open border agenda as well, too. This is why they tried to block Trump when he was fighting tooth and nail to get funding for the border wall, right? This is why a lot of these people, a lot of these Republicans were against it, because they low-key are pro-illegal immigration. They just pretend like they're not, because you're going to need a Republican president, a Republican Senate, and a Republican House in order to actually get things done. But the unfortunate reality is that a lot of these Republicans don't want to get things done, right? They don't really want to govern. They don't want to, okay? And Pat Toomey is showing you, he's literally telling you, yeah, we're okay with just being an opposition party, right? We're okay with just blocking whatever Democrats want to do and occasionally agreeing with them, right? We don't really want to do anything ourselves, right? We don't really want to lead the country, okay, with our own legislation, with our own agenda, and to get the country back on track. We don't want to do that, right? That's what he's saying. And it's like, no, that's not acceptable. That's not acceptable. Republicans need power and control to actually get things done, to pass major legislation. So allowing Kamala Harris to win because you're Trump deranged, and then trying to justify it by saying, well, if Republicans win the Senate, then Kamala Harris won't be able to do anything. Therefore, it's okay for me to sit out. Okay, so what you're telling me is that you don't stand for anything. You just stand against things, but you don't stand for something. And that's the thing I love about the direction that the new Republican Party is headed in. Okay, when you have people like Vivek Ramaswamy who spoke about this, right? He spoke about this a lot. He talks about how as Republicans, as conservatives, we have to stand for something. We can't just stand in opposition to Democrats. That's how you remain a minority party forever, okay? When you just stand in opposition to something, yeah, people are going to vote for you because they're against the other party. But Republicans have to get to the point where people are excited to vote for Republicans because, hey, this is what Republicans stand for, right? This is what they're going to do. Not just what they're going to block, not just what they're against, but what they're for, okay? When you vote for a Republican or conservative, hey, I'm voting for the Republican or conservative because I agree with their values, I agree with the missions, I agree with the policies. This is the agenda, this is what they want to do. Doesn't matter what the left is doing. I support the Republican Party simply based off the platform and what they want to do, okay? The vision that they have for the country, okay? Ain't got nothing to do with it. Democrats can run whoever, okay? It doesn't matter. The Republican vision is what I believe in, right? That is where the Republican Party has to go. And that's one of the reasons why I am happy that a lot of these establishment Republicans are essentially leaving the party, because they don't have a vision. They're part of the reason why Trump was able to win in the first place, because their lack of vision, their lack of leadership. Trump is the first Republican in a long time that has actually presented a vision, okay? A vision that the country can get behind. But again, these other guys, they're not worried about that, okay? They're not worried about that. The Pat Toomeys, the Paul Ryans, the Mitch McConnell, no. All they're worried about is doing the bidding of their corporate donors, right? And making sure that Democrats aren't too extreme. Outside of that, they don't want to do anything else, right? They don't want to do anything else. They don't care about actually solving the problems of this country and fixing things that the Democrats broke. They rather it remain broke, and then they can campaign on it and pretend like they want to fix the problem. But then they tell you out loud, we really don't want to get the power and control needed to fix the problem. We're totally fine with just letting the problem exist and then pretending like we want to do something about it. And that's not acceptable. So, hey, I found this interview here from this guy, Pat Toomey, to be insightful. Okay, you have an establishment Republican saying out loud, okay, that the establishment Republicans have no vision for the country. They don't want power and control. They don't want to actually govern. They solely want the Republican Party to exist as an opposition party. And that is part of the reason why this country has fallen off of a cliff, because the Republicans, the established Republicans, don't stand for a damn thing at all, okay? Which allows Democrats to continue to win elections that, honestly, they shouldn't be winning, right? They should not be winning these elections, but they're winning. A lot of it has to do with the Republican Party being weak and not standing for anything except being against Democrats, and that's just not enough. It's not enough. Let me know what you guys think. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. Most importantly, share a Black conservative perspective. Peace.